What's going on, guys? We are back for the European recap and predictions. So, we'll recap of week 1, predictions for week 2 of the European Rlcs. Let's see how long this video is. I didn't actually look. 25 minutes. We're not going to make it 25 minutes, so you won't see every single goal in this one. But let's get into predictions. We talked a little bit about the bonus stuff that we wanted to talk about in the NA recap at the beginning. So, if you want to go check that out, feel free. But Europe, we got to do a pre-show. It was lovely. Didn't have to be taped. And we got to have some fun with some roster grades with the capital L, which now is a meme. And I just can't fight against the memes, I guess. It just happens. Don't want them, but hey, it is what it is. We move on. Shawset's a beast. Anyway, let's get into it. Reciprocity versus Singularity. This series was kind of interesting to me, where I did feel like Reciprocity was pretty dominant. Shawset played well. Ferrer played well. A lot of low boost plays from Reciprocity to keep the ball in, and then they would just wait for the back wall mishap. Happened a lot from Singularity. They did take a game, but it didn't feel like Reciprocity would ever lose this series, personally. I'm going to just check the scoreboards. I forgot which game they took. They took game 3, Singularity, 1-0. Sure, they didn't score a goal that time. I mean, it's going to happen once in a while. But Ferrer got a hat trick in game 4, so that was brilliant. We just have an old stat of when Shawset scores. They had a fantastic record when he doesn't score. They have a terrible record from last season. But hey, Ferrer had a hat trick in game 4. Shawset didn't score, and they sealed the deal. So it's always a good thing. Shawset, a little bit of a mishap on that play as well. But for the most part, that was relatively clean. For Team Singularity, I think, they contended here or there, but, I don't know. I feel like we need to see more from Singularity. They played Reciprocity, who they were the number 1 in pro power rankings. They probably looked the cleanest, I think, out of all the teams for this week. Now, it could have been their opposition. Who knows? But I would say probably they looked the cleanest out of all these ones that we saw. So, pretty easy 3-1 for Reciprocity. Next week, it's going to be a doozy. They play Mouse, so that should be a lot of fun to see how they compare to one of those top 4 teams. Because what I think, anyway, in Europe is it's a very top 4 heavy league this season. We'll see if there's any surprises. I wouldn't be surprised if one of the top 4 misses Worlds, just because it's hard to, be good consistently. But I do expect at least 3 of the 4 to make it. That'd be Reciprocity, Vitality, Dignitas, and Mouse. All 4 won this week, so far it's looking good. But next week, 2 of those teams battle it out, so that should be fun. But let's continue with these recap. First, we go to Vitality versus Endpoint. This one was weird. I know I gave Alpha praise. It wasn't really about his play necessarily, because I know Alpha says he didn't play well, yada yada. A lot of people say that, but I was happy that he didn't feel like he had to do everything, which is a good sign. Allow Kate Up and Fairy. You're playing with Kate Up and Fairy Peak. Allow them to do what they do best. My one concern, or maybe not concern, I thought Vitality was going to fall back to when they won the World Championship in Season 7. Fairy Peak played a really deep third man, allowed Scrub and Kate Up to just play the offensive side. I thought that's what we were going to get out of Alpha, but it was more rotational. Alpha did move up the field a lot and tried to take a lot of boost and all that stuff, but they did cleanly rotate for the most part, and Fairy and Kate Up just were that dynamic duo when it mattered most to score the goals. So they did a wonderful job there, where I think they were involved in pretty much most of the goals. Alpha had 3 assists on the 8 goals, but besides that, Kate Up and Fairy Peak were the ones doing the heavy lift, and Alpha didn't score any goals in this series. My one thing that I did as well, Alpha only had 5 shots, and again, I don't think that's a bad sign, because I think people were worried a little bit of him just trying to solo everything, so we didn't see that, which is good. Good sign, only 7.25 shots for Endpoint. A lot better than last season, where Vitality was a very up-and-down team, shots on both sides of the field, and they relied on their defense to help them. Alpha had a couple defensive mishaps, one in particular that I remember. So I think there's still some work there to be improved upon, but I think as the season goes on, that should be fine. But Vitality looked relatively strong, I think, in their first showing versus Endpoint. And Endpoint's one of those teams that it's a very offensive-heavy team, and they really couldn't get the ball rolling against Vitality, which is a good sign. Because, again, last season, Vitality was not the greatest defensive team like they used to be. So that was a good sign for them. Moving on, Barca versus Veloce. Like, I felt like this series was a coin flip series. According to the Pro Power Rankings, they actually had Veloce a lot higher than Barcelona. I think it was like 1.5 placements higher, according to the average at least. But Barca was the team that was way more inconsistent in the Pro rankings, where they were really high or really low, while Veloce was all kind of right in the middle because everyone kind of knew where they were at. And maybe we got a good Barca, maybe we got a bad Veloce. But I felt like that series was like definitely two middle-of-the-pack teams battling out. It wasn't that high quality, in my opinion. Very even across the board and pretty much every category. But one of the things I did see a lot, because we have some new live stats coming in, is the average boost amount of Flakes and Ronicky throughout the entire series was number 1 and number 2 in every single game. So they always had a little bit more boost to work with to be able to make plays, which is always a good thing. Flakes obviously rocking the Scarab with the cockroach. I personally have always been in the opinion that cars literally don't matter as well. Like, I know Flakes thinks that. Turbo, to an extent as well, thinks that. And I'm always been on the same boat. But I'm also terrible at Rocket League, so it's a little bit different. But, you know, like, it's an Octane hitbox at the end of the day. Like I don't mind the pick whatsoever. I know James was fighting on me a little bit. He thought Flakes had some missed touches that he wouldn't have had in an Octane. But I'm like, I don't know if that really means all that much. But they get the job done. I thought one of the things that was interesting in this one is Devo really didn't do anything in the series. Like, he did get a lot of assists, actually, so I shouldn't say didn't do anything, but he was never the shooter. 3 shots in 5 games. That's it. But he did get a lot of assists, which is a good sign, at least. Like, as long as you're still involved in the offense, it was just a little bit surprising, because that's a pretty big outlier. And then Freaky, he got involved. Like, everyone kind of got involved on Veloce. Locasio maybe the least, 2 goals, 1 assist, but Freaky only 1 goal. Had the most saves. He was the savior of the season last season, I believe, as well. So he's still riding that. Casio had 0 saves, actually, which is kind of surprising. But the one thing, last season with Veloce, they gave up a ton of shots per game, very similar to Vitality. Number 2 in most shots against per game. And what were the shots? It wasn't bad. Barca only had 7. So not really a high shooting game from anyone. But again, it was a very mediocre series, I thought. Like, I think both teams can play a little bit better. And we'll see. But I do think, like, that was the epitome of I am more confident in my top 4 picks for Europe, because I did feel like these two were the challengers to that. And they both haven't looked that good. Again, it's only 1 week. Things are going to change. TSM Dignitas. This series... So I know, like, people are going to start, like, coming in now and being like, TSM, they're back. Their offense is there. It's like, I don't see it necessarily. They only got 5 shots a game across 5 games. 2 of those went to overtime, so a little bit of extra time. 5.4 shots per game. It's still not a ton of offense. They hit some highlight reel goals, but you need to see a little bit more of that offense. Dignitas, again, didn't play all that well in the early part. Again, a ton of shots, low shooting percentage for Dignitas, so you want them to pick that up. 42 shots to 27 through 5 games versus TSM. But Violent Panda, clutch factor Violent Panda. Game 5, 2 different fakes on 2 different plays to score 2 different goals to give them that 2-goal lead in Game 5. Violent Panda... It's exactly the same as last season with Dignitas, where Violent Panda kind of had to hold them together for the early parts of the season until Astral and Yukio warmed up. Now, I don't think it's that extreme this time, but again, Violent Panda, he's coming up big, one of those underrated players according to Reddit, and he proved once again why he's a 2-time world champ, winning that series. Big time plays from him. TSM, they look fine, and I think a lot of the pros are very high on TSM. They have them as a playoff team. Some people have them even higher than that. But I still need to see a little bit more of that offensive pressure where they get more shots on net. Sustained pressure is what I need from TSM. And we'll see. They are going to be a very defensive team probably and hold teams down. But you still have to score the goals, and TSM didn't do enough of that this time. So TSM loses there. Last matchup, Mousesports versus Monaco. The introduction of Scrub Killa. I think one of the things I thought would happen is it would make Speed even better. Speed was relatively quiet throughout the series. His defense is still a huge question mark right now. He had a lot of plays where he's on the goal line. It's a relatively easy backboard read for pros, and he's just beamed him completely. So he's got to be careful about his defense still from Speed, but I think he will pick it up throughout the season. Scrub had some big-time plays. That Game 2 overtime dunk to pass was huge for Mousesports because if they went down 2-0, obviously very hard to come back. So that was a big play for them. Scrub wound up getting that assist there. Like, he didn't do a ton either, necessarily, on the offensive side. He said he was scoring a lot in his interview. That didn't really happen this series. It was more the Cooksier getting the job done, but a lot of good passes, so Cooksier could just put them home, and a lot of those came from Scrub, so that's a good sign. But Monaco played pretty well for the most part. Like, I think they actually looked pretty good. But then they would just have some boneheaded defensive plays. 3 different ones that, like, you just can't have. It's just, you just can't have it. Game 3, 2 of them to lose that game in overtime. And then Game 4, Tigre just kind of drives away from the net. That's not what you want to see. Like, Tigre had a great dream hack after he had a miserable Rlcs season the last time around, and he was picking it up. But I thought Tigre had a pretty poor series here, and we'll see if Monaco can pick it back up. Like, I think they are probably the favorites to come out of, like, the newcomer teams to have a chance at making a splash here. I know a lot of people are high on Endpoint as well, but Endpoint I don't think showed as much. But again, you know, maybe it's because they played Vitality. Mousesports, I think, still some question marks. Probably a little bit shaky, like, out of all the top 4 teams. Probably the most shaky that we saw, but yeah. Mousesports, they got the win. And again, that's what the good teams do. They find ways to win even when they're not playing all that well. And it was a 3-1 win. It wasn't even a 3-2, so that's pretty helpful as well. Moving over to predictions. Let's get that going here. All right. We got Barcelona Endpoint. So this one's big. This one's really big. Barcelona, they just got that win versus Veloce. Endpoint, if you want to make a splash, now would be the time. Because you don't want to keep losing and then, like, have that pressure build up of, like, we can't beat Rlcs teams. I'm going to go Barca, though. I'm going to go Barca in a close series. I'm going to go 3-2. I'm not sold on Barca yet, but I think they will still be better than Endpoint. Because, again, you know, 3 rookies coming in. There's still going to be some nerves going on there. So I think we'll go... Actually, let's go with 3-1 for Barca. TSM Veloce. Another big game. So these are the 2, I think, like, huge games. Like, TSM Veloce is gigantic because of all the hype that's around TSM from the pros. And if they just lose again to Veloce, who just lost to Barca... Because, like, a lot of people rate Veloce relatively high as well. I think Veloce was higher than TSM on the Pro Power Rankings by 1 place. But I think there's been more hype around TSM lately. You know, I did say at the beginning of the year on Twitter that I would pick Veloce more than once to win a series this league play. And I know I said I was going to pick Veloce until they lose. And they lost, so my streak ended at 1. But I'm going to pick them again, just so I can get my 2 out of the way now, so I don't have to worry about it later, because if they lose this one as well, I don't have to pick them for the rest of the season, which is perfectly fine for me. But I need to pick them at least twice. I promised Veloce I would not predict them to win only 1 game this league play. So I'm going to make good on my promise early on here, and I'm going to go Veloce a 3-1 over TSM in this game. We'll see if TSM can get those highlight reel goals. If they can win this. I just want to see a little bit more consistent offensive pressure from them. Next up, Vitality. Team Singularity, as you know, it's Vitality. Vitality's going to do pretty well. I think Singularity didn't look like miserable versus Reciprocity, but their defense back wall is a big question mark, and Vitality should be able to make them pay if they continue with those mistakes. I expect Alpha to be a little bit more involved on the offensive side at this time as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about Alpha if you're looking at fantasy stuff. I think he will get more involved, and this would be a good week where he could get a lot of points because I think Vitality could win the series pretty easily. I'm actually going to go 3-0. No sweeps last week in Europe, but we got one here. Next up, we got Monaco versus Dig. Dig. It wasn't a miserable performance from Dig. I think it was just a defensive battle. And I think if it's a defensive battle again, sure, Monaco did well in the rival series, number 1 in defense, but it's not the same as Rlcs. It's not the same as playing against Astral, Violent Panda, and Yukio. So I think Dig will win that series pretty easily as well, a 3-1. And Reciprocity versus Mouse, easily the match of the weekend. 2 of the top 4 teams battling out. Reciprocity looked clean. Looked very, very clean in their first week. I'm going to give it to them. I'm going to give them a 3-1 for Reciprocity just because of how clean they looked. Shawsat's still really good at Rocket League. No surprise there. Farrah playing well. Fruity had some moments. I always want to see more and more from Fruity, though, because I always think sometimes he gets kind of overshadowed on that team. So I think in these big games is when you want to see him really step it up. Some server lag there. There were some issues with the stream around that matchup, so it got a little funky. But there it is. Those are my predictions. So you have them. Write them down. Put your predictions in the comments below. I'm not giving away $1,000 or whatever like Jesse is, where he lost last week, because it was a pretty predictable European day. I think 8 people or something like that got it right for his comments. But I wonder if he's going to do it again. I wonder. But if he is, go over there and do it. Just copy my predictions. Just put them in. If you win, I want 10 of the keys. Just 10. All right? Sounds good. But that'll do it for me for the European recap and predictions for week 2. Come join the stream. Chat along. Have some fun. Don't make as many memes about me. All right? Maybe do some memes about like Jorby or JamesBot. You know? Doesn't always have to be about me. And thank you guys again for all the support on YouTube lately. It's been amazing. Thanks for all the subs. We're going to try and hit 100K in 2020. I say that now. But, you know, it's a mile away. But, hey, if you haven't subbed and you like watching my stuff, feel free. Throw a sub out there. It'll greatly help me. I need to pay for diapers somehow for Gibster. Maybe we'll do something crazy at 100K. I'm thinking... Now, I don't know if you guys have any ideas, let me know for 100K. But I was thinking of buying a giant Pikachu outfit and then making some videos with it, playing some Rocket League somehow. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that I assume it doesn't really have hands, but we're going to try. And worst case, I make some videos where I surprise Giblet and Gibster with a giant Pikachu outfit. So that's my idea. If you can think of anything better, let me know. And, yeah, maybe we'll just make it Dignitas Brandon, since their logo is basically just a giant Pikachu or a fat Pikachu. But that's going to do it for our predictions. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for all the support. We'll see you this weekend for some Rocket League action. We'll probably have another video this week. I haven't really decided what else we're going to do. Probably some stats, but we'll see. That's it, though. Bye-bye.